Thanks for joining us on this week's edition of the program Impact, reaching you on ITV. My name is Francisca Oga, and you know what we do on Impact? We talk Nigeria into shape. Now, in continuation of our series for the International Month celebrating women, today we are going to be taking a look at the theme and the focus for this year's International Women's Day. We had callers on the program ask if it is about inclusion or it's about investing in women. So we're privileged to have with us on the program today the country rep for the UN Women in Nigeria, Mrs. Beatrice Eyong, and she will be shedding light on the theme and the focus for this year's International Women's Day. You're welcome on the program, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
It's a very interesting question, but actually, the theme for this year was not just on inclusion and get gender equality when you don't include. So they kind of support each other. So in terms of whether there have been exclusion, yes. Yes, statistics show that there has been exclusion. And those who have been excluded most of the time have been women and girls. And it's because of cultural practices, the socialization process where that we've always passed through, where the men are trained to believe that they are good for leadership, and women are actually trained. They say they should just be seen, they should not even be heard, they should just be at home, they should not go out. And the exclusion of women has brought a lot of problems in terms of development. In fact, as far as one sex is left behind, is lagging behind, we cannot have sustainable development. It cannot. There must be an equilibrium between the sexes to bring about a sustainable development. There's a big study that was carried out by the World Bank that was in 2000, and it brought out a lot of things. They were looking at the cost of gender inequality and the advantages of gender equality. And what they saw was that gender inequalities had huge detrimental effects on the different aspects of development. For instance, look at if we take health, you see in the world there is son preference. People prefer sons. It happens in Nigeria, it happens in Cameroon, it happens in the whole world. Even in China, before they went to the two children policy, they were at first they had just one child, and most families decided to have sons. And what does this mean? This means that if there is a female fetus, they flush out the female fetus. And this study showed that about 60 million to 100 million fetuses that were flushed out were women. And today we don't know, maybe we would have had engineers, doctors. So gender inequalities in health can lead even to death, loss of life. That is very, very clear. And so all those issues led to what we term feminization of HIV. If you look at the mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, you will see that it's still high, and some of the factors is related to gender inequalities, because the time when you decide to go for delivery is determined not by you as a young girl. It's not determined by you. It's determined by maybe your grandmother, maybe it's determined by your mother-in-law or somebody else. And sometimes it's just the fact that they can't have access. So gender inequalities, exclusion of women has also affected the workforce, the quality of the workforce. Sexual harassment and all those things that make women not to be comfortable at their workplace reduces the quality of the labor force, because women see the world differently, men see the world differently. When two of them are sitting at the table, then they have a complete picture of what is supposed to be done. And it is always said, if you do something without me, there are high possibilities that you will do that thing against me. So if women are not sitting at the table, definitely their concerns, their interests their aspirations will not be taken into consideration. Let me go very quickly. In education is the same thing. What we are witnessing today in Nigeria. We have about 18 million dropouts, children who have dropped out of school. They say the statistics show that the majority is made up of girls. When for any reason they leave school before having a marketable skills or learning or having a level of education, you are actually perpetuating poverty. And that's one of the reasons we are seeing feminization of poverty. So this exclusion is actually taking a lot of qualities from what we do day to day. We also have seen, in terms of the economy, a gap in income between men and women is depriving countries of 160.2 trillion US dollars. So the issue of exclusion is not only affecting women, it's affecting the whole nations, the whole countries. And it is said that if we could make sure that women and girls get the same access to school and the same access to decision-making positions, to employment, then women's human capital, the value, the monetary value of women's human capital will double. It will double from 283 trillion to about 453 trillion. So, in any way, exclusion has never been advantageous for sustainable development. And the last thing I want to summarize is that look in Africa, the conflicts that we have had. If you analyze them, you will see that most of them were because of people felt that they were put out of resources, they were put out of decision-making positions, they were put out of positions where they could have money or something of that sort. So exclusion will never benefit the human race. Inclusion will bring us more wealth, more understanding, more cohesion, and more peace.
Now, the issue is investment to accelerate progress. How do you see the present situation when it comes to, the investment that's been made in women? We have the STEM and some initiatives. Do you think we are doing enough in terms of investing in women?
In terms of whether we have been financing the right thing, it's an analysis that UN Women and the government, the Ministry of Budget and Planning, other UN agencies, we've been asking ourselves whether we have actually been financing the right thing, whether we've been investing in the right way. The first thing I want to talk about this theme about invest. If they say invest in women is to accelerate progress, it means women are lagging behind in nearly all the development aspects. And because they are lagging behind, we will not achieve a sustainable development. So it's important for us to invest in women. The other reason why they are saying that we need to invest is the question you just asked, that we have not yet sufficiently invested. Yes, in women. For instance, globally, they are saying that the statistics are showing that we need 360 billion US dollars annually to bring about gender equality and women's empowerment. The African Development Bank has also said Africa, especially Africa south of the Sahara, is going to need at least 40 billion US dollars to talk about gender equalities. I don't know, Nigeria being the giant of Africa, maybe in all that Nigeria may need about 25 billion US dollars to bring about gender equality. So it's not sufficient. What has been invested is not sufficient. But the other aspect which you asked that is very important is the fact that are we investing in the right things? And so we have made an analysis. What we've seen is that if you look at the 17 SDGs, The central SDG is SDG 5. SDG 5, if we don't achieve SDG 5, we will never achieve the other 16 SDGs. So we have tried to do an analysis to see how we are implementing gender equality and women's empowerment. What we see is that many, even those activists, they have gone out of SDG 5. They are not like following SDG 5 targets, because SDG 5 targets were crafted in a way that they are holistic, they are integrated. It means for you to get SDG 5, you have to implement all of them. But today, we don't seem to see that they are being implemented in an equitable way. Another thing we've seen is that the funding is shrinking for gender equality and women's empowerment, but also the funding that is there is not equitable on these different targets. For instance, you have discrimination, you have violence, you have harmful practices. I have just demonstrated to you how early marriages, taking a girl child out of school for early marriage, perpetuates poverty for that child and the children that she's going to have. So those practices need more investment. We need to have reforms that will make sure that women are free to unleash their potentials. They are free in terms of their movements, in their minds, in access to resources, decision making positions, women's participation and leadership. You can see it at the level of National Assembly. You will see that it has reduced. It has gone even lower than 10 years ago. But if you look at the investment inside that particular thematic area, you see that many people don't put money. Many donors don't put money. Government itself does not put enough money. The analysis that we've made is just 1% of the budget that goes for gender equality as a primary objective. Is 1%. Meanwhile, the concerns of gender inequalities within this country is bigger than 1%. So there is need to rethink, to reimagine, and to redo the funding and financing of gender equality in this country.
We've seen several celebrations of the International Women's Day, the 16 days of activism, and even in the middle of the year, there's so much going on. The UN Women is doing a lot and other agencies, but it would appear that we are not gaining much grounds, because these issues persist. Why is this so?
Yeah, I think there are issues around, you know, monitoring progress and listen to what people say. It's like nothing is happening. No, I think maybe the issue is we are not communicating that results. Gender activists will always want to communicate problems instead of communicating results. And the issue is that Nigeria is a big country. We are talking here about more than 100 million women that we are talking about. By the time we add men also, it's a huge population. So even if we had all the resources, we will not be able to reach everybody at the same time. But nevertheless, we have results. First of all, let me talk in terms of gender-based violence. Take gender-based violence for instance. At first, it was a taboo to talk about certain things. Today, people talk about it. They talk over the radio. They talk. That culture of silence is being broken. For us, that is actually a success in that field. And look at the legal framework that have followed the VAP Act, the Child Right Acts. All those are significant progress that have been made to see that 35 states out of 36 states have validated or have adopted the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act and the Child Right Act. That for me is a huge success. And the fact that we have states that have not only domesticated, but have developed action plans, budgeted action plans. It means they intend to put their own money in the issue of gender-based violence. We have states like Sokoto in the one-stop center. They have put their own money to providing solution to victims of let me not say victims, survivors of gender-based violence. We also witness the same thing in Calabar, in Cross River State. So people are becoming conscious, governments are becoming conscious, and they are now putting their own money. Before Prince Clem left, the former Minister of Budget, he put inside the national budget two forensic labs, one in Abuja and one in Lagos, for government. I mean, it means there's some success that is going on. Another thing I would say is the gender responsive planning and budgeting. The last 2 years that I came here, I witnessed that the budget call letter from the Minister of Finance was asking and stipulating and insisting that gender disaggregated data should be used, and that affirmative actions should be done for vulnerable women. I mean, it's coming out in a national budget call letter. That is a huge success for me. It's not enough, but it's something to show that the government itself is aware of the issues and is saying that let's make our budget gender responsive, so that the aspirations, the problems, the needs of all the different classes of people are taken into consideration in development planning, development budgeting, development implementation. So those are some of the things I can say. Look at leadership. It's true you would say women's leadership at the national level has really not increased as we wanted. But I want to say the analysis that we made, we saw that the election before this last election, we saw that there were many political parties. But if you look at the number of women they put on their list, on their candidate list, it was per political parties. It was fewer than what happened in 2023, where we saw fewer political parties, but doubling their confidence on women, putting more women on the electoral list. And we saw the participation of women. A lot of work was done to encourage women to come as candidates and to come as voters and even to come as observers. And even the security officers, there were also women there looking at it. And in terms of economic empowerment, much has been done. But again, as I would say, we have not yet arrived. We are still aspiring to go further and further and further. So, despite the fact that we may say um, there's a lot to do, but I want to put on the table that there is progress. More girls are going to school. More women are going. Look at the private sector. Look at the banking sector. They are showing us a very good example whereby we have at least 22% of CEOs, persons at top management level, who are women and who are showing bringing about very good results. So I think there's some progress. We still have some things to do, but there is some progress.
Taking you up on the issue of the SGBV and the response, it is true because I did investigative reporting. I was in Calabar. There's a robust response system. There's a will to actually help the people out there. But what I noticed is that most of the enforcement officers, ranging from the police to the women's decks at the gender decks at the Ministry of Women Affairs, they complain of funding, financing. The one-stop shop would have been the answer, but where there's no one-stop shop and the officers have to dip into their pockets and bring out their money to pay for transport, to pay for health needs, they are limited in their response. Is there anything the UN Women is doing to see that these one-stop centers are replicated in the 36 states, and also probably to monitor the level of financing? Because what we see most times is that we have figures on the budget, but it doesn't actually make its way to the receiving officers who are actually on the field. So is there any form of partnership or intervention the UN Women is doing to ensure that there's effectiveness where there are one-stop centers, and where there are no one-stop centers, to ensure that we have those springing up to help, faster response to GBV cases?
For instance, the private sector has launched a GBV fund that will be led by the private sector. It's looking at 25 million US dollars that the private companies themselves. So this is work that we've done with our private sector partners. So to mobilize more money, and we are giving them recommendations on where we think if they put their money, they would actually, yeah. And we also have, since I'm talking about the private sector, we also have what we call the women empowerment policies, principles. The women empowerment principles that we work with private sector is a set of principles that private sector enterprises, like we have First Bank, we have MTN, they ascribe to it. It's an international movement. They ascribe to it, and they accept that they are going to implement those women empowerment principles. So things like sexual harassment, intimidation of women, even the work-life balance. I'm a woman. If I want to deliver a baby, I should be free to deliver a baby. They shouldn't tell me that no, you cannot deliver a baby now. So all those principles are now adopted by more than 200 private enterprises in Nigeria, which is something that is going towards fighting gender-based violence, sexual and gender-based violence. We also have a strong partnership with the Governors Spouses Forum. In fact, the last 16 days of activism was more than what we have ever seen, because we saw the even first-time first ladies move around their place to do sensitization, to discuss with people, talk about sensitized men and women, and they are also putting in state money, the state government money. So that is another way that we are mobilizing. We are working with them to mobilize funds for gender-based violence. Like I said earlier, that Calabar and Sokoto, they have put their own money. So we are working that, but we are also doing advocacy with our other partners, like the donors, the donor community. We are still bringing the issues to them. The UN agencies too, we are bringing them, and other stakeholders. So the issue of funding is not enough, but increasingly we think we are going to increase funds for gender equality and women's empowerment. For instance, the gender responsive budgeting, we are taking it to the states so that the states are able to put their own money. That's another sustainable way. Because to be very frank, no external funding can bring about gender equality and women's empowerment. It is the national funds, the finances that are found in the country, that can be sustainable to make sure that gender equality and women's empowerment, especially gender-based violence, is handled. So I think we are also putting our own money. Yes.
The stereotypes we are fighting are generational. They have been there and they don't seem to be letting up. How do you think women themselves, older women now, are helping to perpetuate these stereotypes?
Yeah, the truth is that things are changing anyway. Things are changing, but the truth is that when you have been socialized to a point where you lose your own self inside the socialization, where they tell you that what this is good for men, this is good for women, and all those things. So yes, it's true. If we take like female genital mutilations, it is true that women, older women, are actually active in following up that female genital mutilations. But there are issues around it, issues of culture, issues of religion, issues of well, some of them do it to have their money, because that's when they will also have their money.
So much more for making our time to talk with us on this program. We can see that the UN Women has actually made so much impact, and we look forward to seeing more being done so that we can collectively achieve the aim of ensuring equity and equality for women. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. I'm the one to tell you thank you, because you give us the opportunity to talk about issues that make us not sleep at night. So this is an opening to talk about the things that are very, very important to us. The media is a very important partner to us. And I believe that this is not a just one time thing that will get finished. I think from time to time we need to meet and talk about how we are faring, what we are doing, so people can. Thank you so much. I'm happy. Thank you.